Why does Prime Day still matter? I've heard some rumblings of some brands, maybe this year Prime Day isn't going to be as impactful. Are people going to spend as much as they have in past years? Are brands going to push as many dollars with more uncertainty in the market? So why does Prime Day still matter for us this year? So in 2024, we saw a 300% lift in sales during the Prime Day event compared to people who were not purchasing during that Prime Day. So that's going to, obviously shows a large impact, even within when we're just looking at an Intentwise advertiser set, a large impact during that sale period for all advertisers. So this kind of creates the opportunity, this cycle together creates the opportunity for brands to prioritize Prime Day even more, as there's potentially decreased competition, potentially increased demand, and with the extended event, building more opportunities where brands are running out of budget, cost per clicks get lower, so more brands can really put their emphasis and focus on the event. Before I jump into things, just a quick intro on myself and Intentwise. My name is Kenton. I am the product evangelist here at Intentwise. So really working day to day with different customers to help them grow their understanding of the product, how we can be using Intentwise to better optimize and utilize our ad sets that you guys are already spending on. Intentwise offers 3 different solutions, one of which is Intentwise Ad Optimizer, which is going to allow you to automate your bid and budget optimizations, get better insights into your ad data. And we'll touch on a couple of ways we could use that today as we specifically look at Prime Day. Intentwise Analytics Cloud is our data warehouse. So that's where we're going to bring in all of your different data streams, whether that's Amazon Ads, Vendor Central, Seller Central, Search Query Performance Reports. And we're going to house that all in one place so that you can get concise data measurement across the board for your brands. And then AMC, which we'll touch on several AMC solutions today that'll be applicable whether you're using Intentwise or not, whether you're just using the AMC console as is. Intentwise AMC really takes the SQL out of that AMC process. So that'll be the main difference from the text or reports that we're talking about today, but definitely applicable for everybody on those points. A quick agenda of what we'll be walking through, like I mentioned before. Why does Prime Day still matter, right? I think I've heard some rumblings of some brands, maybe this year Prime Day isn't going to be as impactful. Are people going to spend as much as they have in past years? Are brands going to push as many dollars with more uncertainty in the market? So why does Prime Day still matter for us this year? And then past that, what's different in 2025, right? What are the different things that we need to be looking at and taking into account this year compared to years prior? Thinking about our ad strategy during Prime Day, how do we automate that ad strategy, and then how do we measure success during the event? So why does Prime Day still matter? So think about why Prime Day matters this year. I want to look back at last year and the performance differences that we saw throughout the event period then. So we look at this data. This data is coming from Intentwise advertisers. So this is the collective of all Intentwise advertisers that we saw last year during the Prime Day event, comparing that to that same 2-day period in June, right? So we can get a good month-over-month comparison of how does performance change? Obviously, we experience a big increase in spend, impressions, and sales, but I want to call out how big of a difference that is, right? So in 2024, we saw a 300% lift in sales during the Prime Day event compared to people who were, not purchasing during that Prime Day. So that's going to, obviously shows a large impact, even within when we're just looking at an Intentwise advertiser set, a large impact during that sale period for all advertisers, whether it's people promoting deals, people not promoting deals, having discounts, right? That's going to be applicable across the board. And I think the other thing that was interesting is we also see the same thing happen to our return on ad spend, right? So typically we'd experience cost per click to go up during Prime Day. We're going to be potentially dealing with efficiency issues. Is click-through rate going to go down because there's just more ads out there? But we actually see, despite lower pricing, that increased competition, that return on ad spend goes up during this period. So really with that combination, right, this still remains a key period for advertisers on Amazon to take advantage of. And if we do see any pullback from certain advertisers, that just increases the opportunity for the advertisers that are willing to take advantage of the event this year. Past that, as we know, Prime Day isn't just affecting that 2 days, right? We're going to see a lasting effect come out of Prime Day. So this is looking at the 2 weeks after Prime Day, so the immediate 2 weeks following versus the 2 weeks following that. And some of this, we're going to see that there's probably more sales during this 2 weeks after Prime Day period that are being attributed to people who saw ads or clicked on ads during that Prime Day event. So some lingering attribution there. But what I want to call out here is we do see a bit of a dip in our overall spend and sales in that 2 weeks following the event compared to the weeks prior. So you do see a cutback in net new customers that are being attributed to sales when they're finding your products during that day. So customers who are planning on shopping on Amazon in the next couple of weeks when that Prime Day event comes out, they're going to push to bring their sales forward to that period more than likely, especially, with products that aren't in like a consumable category. They're more one-time purchases, higher AOV products. So when you're in those categories, it just speaks even more to the importance of Prime Day, because if we're not taking advantage of Prime Day, not only are we potentially missing out on those days of the event, but some lingering sales that might not be there as well. Prime Day is also a great brand building event, right? Even outside, if we look outside of the scope of what are the initial sales coming on Prime Day just brings so many eyes to the Amazon platform that it's going to help you build a lasting impact past the event as well. So last year, I think it was actually 130 million Prime customers shopped during the event, but over 100 million Prime shoppers are estimated to have shopped during the event period. So if you're running sponsored brand ads, video ads, even sponsored product ads across the platform, right, you're really unlocking the ability for shoppers to, one, purchase now during the event period, but two, get some insight into your brand with that increased reach, increased impression count that we saw before, so that you can continue to see that lasting effect as customers who may not purchase during the event period come back and purchase in the future as well. You can see here the advertisers using Intentwise specifically saw a 300% increase in ad impressions during Prime Day compared to the same amount of period in the same period in the previous month. This isn't speaking to they used Intentwise and they saw a 300% increase, but all advertisers across the board saw a 300% increase in impression count. So that's despite, right, like increased competition again, like we talked about before. So really allows you to cast a wider net during that event period. That opens the opportunity for tactics like video, streaming TV, online video, driving users to your brand store, sponsor brand video, right? These type of tactics are not only going to drive event sales, like we talked about, but those longer term branded customers, because customers are going to feel like they know your brand, know your product a little bit more without longer term engagement versus like a sponsored product, like for an example. And then based on Intentwise's average data, we do see that lifetime value following Prime Day is pretty even with people who are purchasing outside of that Prime Day event. A typical assumption that I've heard in the past is, okay, if I'm selling to a user during Prime Day, they're just taking advantage of my lower price, which is for the most part true, right? That's why we see that potential dip in those couple weeks after Prime Day. But the other assumption that potentially comes out of that is, okay, now, this is a one-time customer. They're not going to become a recurring customer from our brand. They're not going to continue to purchase from me down the line. But the data that we have suggests that that's not true. So that customers who are purchasing that event period purchase at about the same frequency past that point as a customer who purchases in any regular period as well. So with that increased volume and increased reach that we have, right, we have the ability to take this, one period and bring in a lot of new brand customers for the long term based off of the increased volume during that one period. We can acquire customers at a higher quantity, and they're going to remain, that same quality as any other customer might be. So what's different this year, right? Let's speak on that. An extended event. I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing, that people are talking about, and that we're seeing with Amazon is, there's a large expectation that we could be looking at a 4-day event this year versus a 2-day event. And even in the case that that's not true, right, we should prepare in the case that it is, because that's just going to be a vastly different use case than what we've experienced in past years, right? Our users going to purchase on day 1 and day 4, or users going to purchase on day 2 and day 3. We've got to spread our budget allocation across those days, assuming we're not just going to see largely increased budgets from that point. So we need to prepare like that's what's going to happen, and then if it's not, right, we can adjust back to that 2-day window that we've been adjusting for in past years as well. So this potential for a 4-day event really emphasizes the need for strong budget allocation, right? If I'm trying to take the same budget that I had in 2 days and spread it across 4 days, but still remain competitive, still remain still be able to capture the full reach of the event, we have to be strategic in how we allocate that budget. I think historically what we've seen is that when we have that 2-day event, that day 1 dominates the event over day 2. You can see in this data here that in 2023, we saw that day 2 sales were only 70% of the sales that came on day 1 across the board as an average. However, in 2024, that dropped up to 84%. So 84%, we had 84% of the sales that we had on day 1 on day 2 as well. So we're seeing increasingly more customers push to day 2, with day 1 still being the leader there, but more customers spreading throughout the event. So as we move to a 4-day event, right, the natural assumption might be that someone's going to purchase on the first day of the event, and maybe you'll probably see another peak on the last day of the event. But this data might suggest that since we've already seen that being more spread out in the past, users are probably going to continue to shop across the extension of the period to make sure they're capturing the best deals, right? If more and more users are focused strategically on the types of deals they're going to get, and we'll see some more data around this in a slide or two, where more users that have been surveyed about Prime Day are really focusing on getting the best deals possible, you're going to probably see that more of those users extend into the second day, the third day, the fourth day to make that purchase, because that allows them that extended time to do some product research. What you probably still will see us speak that first day, I would guess as much, but that extended deal of research is going to push more users throughout the event as well. So something we need to account for when we're doing our budget allocations. And so really what the best way we can approach this is, right, I think we would go into an event with an evenly allocated budget, maybe slightly more on that first day. But during the event, we really should be utilizing tools like Amazon Marketing Stream and Rapid Retail Analytics, if you're a vendor account, to get intraday data as it's coming through for our brand, right? So I might experience that, hey, on day one, my cost per click is doing really strong. So I want to push more dollars here because that's going to allow me to drive additional clicks for my budget. Or maybe it's the opposite of that, right? Maybe my cost per click is higher than I expected it to be. And then I get into day two and, my cost per click is much lower because maybe people aren't allocating as much budget there, but my conversion rates are remaining the same. So I'm seeing a higher return on ad spend, and that'll allow me to quickly make budget adjustments to drive more dollars into my day two allocation. Maybe it takes from the later days, but if I know that's where I'm going to get some performance, I can make those allocations quickly. So really keep an eye on current real-time data. It's going to be a key with this extended period to make sure that we have those strong budget allocations. The next thing I think we'll need to take into account specifically for this year's event is just looking at the overall sentiments of both the consumer and some sellers that we're seeing out there. From conversations I've had, sentiments I've seen around the industry, it seems like several brands are planning to kind of cut back their focus on Prime Day this year. That might be, we're going to have less deals. We're not going to increase our ad spend the same much that we might be during the past. It's actually something that eMarketer reports have estimated as well, that several brands are going to put less dollars into the event, again, whether that's their deals or ad spend, just due to the, one, just impacts on the business from the overall economic state from tariffs or other economic factors, but two, some wondering what the traffic might look like, what the purchase rates might look like during the event. So definitely might see some changes in competition compared to previous years. As on top of, if we see a 4-day event, budget's going to be spread thin throughout the event as well. Contrary to that, with more consumers expecting that there's going to be price hikes throughout the back half of the year, it's estimated that about 45% of consumers, based off of some survey results, are planning to purchase more products during the event that they would expect to go up in price throughout the year. Right. So if you're a higher value, like an electronic product, or maybe even some apparel products, right, where people might expect a tariff impact potentially to have a longer lasting effect for your brand, consumers are probably more likely to purchase from you during this deal period, with the expectation that, not only is this deal 15-20% off, but I also think the prices are going to go up 20%. So really, if I'm going to purchase from the brand, this is the time to do it. So, based off of that sentiment, we would expect to see almost increased consumer spending or shopping during this time period. So this kind of creates the opportunity, this cycle together creates the opportunity for brands to prioritize Prime Day even more, as there's potentially decreased competition, potentially increased demand, and with the extended event, there'll be more opportunities where brands are running out of budget, cost per clicks get lower, so more brands can really put their emphasis and focus on the event. One thing I'd call out is that same survey data suggests that most shoppers are going to be looking for a 20% deal or a discount to be truly considering that product should be like a true on sale or truly participating in the event. So that's something to keep in mind as you're planning what those discounts are. Shoppers are probably going to be looking for those deeper discounts and valuing that a little bit heavier this year, just with taking into account overall pricing and how that's changed over the last couple of months and how the sentiment is of that change for the rest of the year. The other thing we're continuing to experience is just the impact of social commerce. I think we've seen this specifically last year and maybe even a little bit in 2023, where some of the biggest success stories that you hear on Prime Day came from someone had a TikTok video go viral, someone's on Instagram, right? And those posts and interactions that they're getting on those social platforms are trickling over to their Amazon sales, right? They're having a big impact on the success of those Prime Day sales. So shoppers are expected to continue to turn to social media during Prime Day. Those social icons that you see on the right, 47% of shoppers are expected to look at Facebook in some capacity, 39% of shoppers are expected to look at Instagram, and 28% are expected to look at TikTok in some capacity to drive education and shopping decisions during Prime Day. So this unlocks an opportunity for your brand specifically to focus on those off Amazon promotions, to pushing people to Amazon to get a competitive advantage over your competitors that might not be taking advantage of this shift in product discovery. So if your competitors are doing nothing with social commerce and you can go out there and work with influencers, run some social ads, especially leading up to the event, that'll create some additional buzz around your product. So now people are searching your branded terms instead of category terms now, right? And that allows you to, allocate those ad dollars during the event a little bit wider because you're not focused as much on going after highly competitive keywords for people who are starting their shopping journey on Amazon because we've already captured them off that Amazon placement. And finally, the last big thing that we expect to have an impact this year is just the continued omni-channel spread that we've seen within e-commerce or retail media specifically. So 50% of consumers expect during Prime Day that they'll at least explore what deals are available on other retailers like a Walmart or a Target. So, shoppers may still end up purchasing on Amazon, but this unlocks another opportunity for customers to discover your product, go look for it as be on sale on Amazon, as an increasing amount of shoppers are expected to be searching for and looking for products on these different platforms. So we'll be needing to, if you guys are currently selling your products on Walmart, Target, Roundel, however you're promoting those, putting a couple additional dollars behind those ad sets there as well will be really impactful for your Amazon sales. Maybe you're not even on sale on those platforms, but if someone sees your product as they're searching around in your category, they might come look and see what's their, what do they have a Prime Day sale, and that could drive some additional cross-stream sales that way as well. A question we got in the chat is TikTok Shop is running their biggest ever summer sale, June 24th to June 30th. Do we see this softening sales or increasing Amazon's impact? I wouldn't expect that something like that is going to have a decreasing effect on Amazon. I think, right, TikTok Shop at this point, we still see a lot of those impulse purchases, right? Which could be, has an effect during that deal period. But I think the brands that'll do the best during Prime Day are probably those, larger one-time purchases, higher cost products, which aren't necessarily as conducive with what we've seen historically on TikTok Shop. So I almost think they could be used complementary, right? If you're promoting something during that deal period, you could say, hey, we have this sale coming up during Prime Day. That might allow consumers to wait if they're going to get a deeper discount in 10 days, whatever that deal period might end up being. So really utilizing that potentially increased shopping specific volume on TikTok during that period to say, hey, wait, we have this deal coming soon as well, I think could help drive some of that additional volume that we talked about from social commerce. So definitely think they could be used complementary there. Awesome. So stepping past that, if you have any questions on what we just walked through, definitely, again, please feel free to throw those in the chat and we can circle back there as well. But really working to what's our ad strategy that we're going to look at with Prime Day, taking all these things into account. We know, we might be looking at a 4-day event. Social commerce is more important. Consumers are really looking for those discounts. What are the things that we can do within our ad strategy to really make sure that we're taking advantage and tapping into those things? So I think the first key that we know makes a big impact on our Prime Day event comes before the event, right? So how are we going to focus on our lead up strategies to have the widest net as we go into the event? So data from our advertisers at Intentwise has shown us that if we look at our purchase rate for customers who see a product just during Prime Day versus someone who sees that product in the lead up and during Prime Day, we do see an increased rate of purchase and increased return on ad spend typically from users who are seeing a product in the lead up and Prime Day compared to someone who just sees the product during Prime Day. This also remained consistent with users who are seeing it in the lead out period, but really focusing in on how can we utilize that lead in period here. So definitely, we can see here a very important period for driving those sales during the event. What we need to be focusing on during the lead in is really how can we cast the widest net here, right? I don't necessarily look to drive that immediate sale during that lead up period. I might be running a slight promo, but consumers know, right? I have a deeper promotion coming in a week, so I'm probably going to hold off on my initial purchases. So we really want to cast as wide of a net and focus on reach here. So to do that, we're going to look at consideration-based assets, whether that's a display asset or video campaigns, targeting in market segments if we're looking at like a sponsored display or a DSP, as well as competitor audience sets. So I hear someone who's looking at my competitor products but hasn't purchased from my competitor, specifically on the DSP side of things as well. Although we could definitely target through sponsored display people who are actively shopping on competitor product pages as well. That's just going to allow you to be top of mind for your competitors. So when the event period comes, or for your shoppers that are in aisle or shopping around in your category. So when the event period does come up and you show to them via an ad in the Search Console, or maybe they come looking directly for you, you have that increased brand awareness for the event period, which we can see has a positive impact on your performance during the event. If you are utilizing things on the DSP side of the house, making sure we limit our frequency caps can be a good strategy during the lead up period specifically, just so we can continue to maximize reach for the dollars that we have. As we know, more of our dollars are probably pushed to the event period. So if we have more limited dollars during the lead up, limiting our frequency per user can help us, get some additional reach out of the dollars that we do have. When we're thinking about our creatives, right, if we're really honing in on display assets, whether that's on search or on DSP, we want to make sure that we have custom ad sets, whether that's a video, which are great placements, whether that's sponsored brand video, display video, or using custom display creatives that really speak to my overall brand or top product features. Again, we're not really focused on let's get the sale right away. We're focused on let's be in the mind of a consumer. Let's do something to call out what makes our brand unique, what makes our product unique, whether that's through video or through display, so that when the event period comes back and they see my product in a sponsored product ad, they see my product in a sponsored display ad, they're more inclined to purchase from me because they have that brand recognition. So make sure that our creatives really speak to that as well. And then finally, utilizing social media campaigns like we talked about. So working with influencers, working through your own social media accounts to really highlight, hey, here's our product, again, similar to the ads that we saw before. Here's our product offering. There's a Prime Day deal coming up, right? We can link directly to that. Here's what makes our product unique. Here's what makes our brand unique. It's a great way to get a competitive advantage over competitors in your category. Awesome. Now shifting to during the event, right? So we've done our lead up period. We worked through that. What can I do during the event to drive that additional sales volume then? The first thing we're going to want to be doing is focusing on exposing to users that saw our ad sets during the lead-in period. We just looked at the data that shows us that someone who sees our ad during the lead-in period is more likely to purchase from us during the event period. So how can we expose more to those segments of customers? So within our display ads, we want to focus shifting away from the consideration side of things a little bit, focusing more on people who have viewed our page in the last couple of weeks and contextual-based audiences to target people who are actively shopping on our product pages. Additionally, we could test a budget within our display assets, targeting any user who saw an ad during the lead-in period, right? So this isn't saying they're necessarily actively shopping during Prime Day, but if they saw an ad from us during the lead-in period, let's go after them again with a display ad, falling a little bit more in that contextual bucket still, because maybe they haven't exactly interacted with my brand yet. But again, we know that someone who's exposed during both periods has an increased propensity to purchase. So maybe I'm on DSP and I go after that user who saw an ad during the lead-in with a responsive e-commerce creative, and they can see that I have a 20% discount now, and that's going to be what takes them to take that next action. Or even on sponsored display, right? If I could use a custom AMC audience to create that segment and go after it, and I could use my display creatives there that are built into Amazon, which will also showcase that deal that we have running there. So some great ways to get some consideration still, but focusing on users who already have a little bit of that brand awareness. A new feature that we're going to have this year that we haven't had for any Prime Day in the past is going to be bid boosting. And I think this is something, especially as we want to be more targeted throughout the event, that can be a huge unlock for brands to take advantage of it, because I think there's going to be a lot of brands that haven't quite worked into bid boosting strategies, and it could be something that's underutilized this event. So using bid boosting, if you're not familiar with it, within sponsored product and sponsored brand assets, I can take any AMC audience set. That could be things like someone who saw my product page, someone who created a branded search, someone who's seen an ad from me, someone who's added my product to cart but hasn't purchased it, right? I can take any one of those audience sets, and on a sponsored product or sponsored brand campaign, I could bid boost similar to a top of search placement adjustment to expose more to those users that are within my audience segment, or bid more for those users than I am the general market. So, again, we're talking about exposing to users that saw you during the lead up. If you create an audience of people who saw an ad during the lead up, or clicked your ad during the lead up, or anything along those lines, right? That now I bid boost for those users because I know they have a higher propensity to purchase from me, maybe by 20%. If I know they're going to be 20% more likely to purchase, I'm going to bid an additional 15% for them because I want to make sure that I'm capturing that sale from those user segments. So that's a huge unlock that I think is going to be available for brands who are really focused on those sponsored product ads. And if you want to find out what that overlap is specifically for you, AMC data from last Prime Day is still available within the console. AMC offers us 12 and a half months of historical data. So you can still today go back and look at what's my, what lift do I see when someone sees a lead-in ad and an ad during the event? And then I can, adjust my bid boosting and display asset strategy accordingly. So definitely something you can take advantage of heading into the event over the next couple of weeks. That data should be available up until the start of the event when it would start to roll out of AMC. The next thing we can do during the event is creating a lookalike audience of someone who purchased from me during Prime Day of 2024 and use that as a target in my display ads as well. So like, again, maybe sponsored display could be DSP when I'm really focused on that consideration asset or that consideration segment. Let's create a lookalike audience, everybody who purchased from me. And for those of you who aren't familiar with lookalike audiences, this is another AMC audience set where I can look at users who have similar tendencies as people within a certain AMC audience. So we're looking at people who have certain tendencies of people who purchased from me in Prime Day. And I could make that, people who have very, very similar tendencies, people who have pretty close tendencies, or people who have a very broad match of tendencies. So we probably want to go around that balanced level of things and use this as a segment to go after those net new customers. Maybe I want to layer in an in-market audience as well, right? Someone who's in market for my product and has an overlap with users who have purchased from me last Prime Day. Maybe I want to bid or raise my CPMs a little bit more for users in that segment. And finally, as we talked about before, really keeping an eye on my intraday data through Amazon Marketing Stream and rapid retail adjustments, so I can make quick budget adjustments across the event. If we're looking at a 4-day event, you're going to have the same budget. Like I said before, we really have to hone in our budget allocation so that we're not running out of budget during midday. We're not running out of budget by day 3, right? That could be something that could really harm a brand. Is honestly, our costs are going to be lower towards the back end of the event as some brands who don't focus on budget allocation start to run low on dollars there. So I really want to make sure we have a strong allocation and we're allocating when we start to see performance and moving quickly there. So I touched on that a couple times, but I think that's a key point for the extended event this year. Next, what are some more specific ad tactics that we can look at during Prime Day? I think the first thing we want to look at is really casting a wide keyword net. Depending on what your strategy is outside of Prime Day, right? This might be something you're already doing, but some brands I know focus really strategically on a subset of keywords that are probably a little bit shorter tail, higher in the funnel, better, or they built out specifically for their brand. Well, during Prime Day, right, those really short tail keywords, like if I was selling a pair of earbuds, for example, the term wireless earbuds, but that product is going to have, or that search term is going to have a pretty high cost per click during the event because all our competitors are also going after that keyword. So if I cast a wider net, focusing on a broader keyword base, I'm not only going to probably see lower costs, but I'm probably going to go after users who have a higher search intent for my product specifically, right? Again, in that same headphone example, if I change that keyword to wireless earbuds with high sound performance, right? And my product's best asset is its sound performance, then that's going to specifically speak to those users versus a user who might be looking for comfort or price point or connectivity, right? Whatever the other features they might be looking at there. To find these search terms, we could utilize high performing terms from auto or broad match campaigns that are performing well up into the event and keyword harvest them over to an exact match or a phrase match during the event period to cast that wider net there. We really want to focus our ad spend on promotional ASINs, or if you have any brand store pages that are really focused in on the ASINs that you're promoting during the event, sending customers there can always be a great way to do things so that you're not focused in on a specific product or pushing a specific product, but you can focus on your brand as a whole, right? Again, in that same headphone example, if I have 10 different SKUs of headphones that are all on sale, someone who's just searching wireless earbuds might want my high performance model. They might want my budget model, right? Might want my old models, right? Whatever I might have. So if those are all on sale and I, instead of just promoting one product in a sponsored brand video ad or a sponsored product ad, I send them to my brand store. Now they have a full selection of products available for me and can really select the one that most speaks to the products that they're looking for or the features that they value. So really within those short tail keywords, that can be a great strategy as well. But either way, really making sure we hone in the budget. Don't just go through and say select all, increase budget 200% across all your campaigns, right? That can be an easy way to do things. But if only some of your ASINs are on promotion, really making sure that you're focusing spend on those ASINs and dialing back your budgets on other campaigns and other products is important during the event period. And increasing competitor targeting is another great tactic that we can take into the event. Like more shoppers are going to be price comparing. More shoppers are going to be looking at a variety of products, doing deeper product research. Right? We saw that in our statistics before. People are looking for deeper deals. They're looking specifically for deals. So if you going after competitors who maybe aren't running deals, are running lighter deals than you, even comparable deals to you, right? Really focusing on sponsored products or sponsored display placements on those main competitors you have can be a great opportunity to bring users from their pages that might be shopping around to your pages to show that those competitive differences you might have to that competitor are. Creating compliant deal creatives can be another way, a great way to speak to the promotions that you're running, right? So if you are running 20% off on a product and you know that's coming up, there is lots of compliance that goes into it, but you can create display creatives that speak to, hey, our product's on sale, our product's on this level of sale, as long as we have that disclaimer text of when the sale runs out. We have end dates on the campaigns, right? But that can be a unique way where it takes a couple extra steps, but it's something that all your competitors are doing. It's a unique way to specifically speak to customers that are looking for those promotional periods, or promotional ASINs, which we know more customers are going to be looking for this year than they have even in the past. And then I think the final thing is just having the emphasis on sponsored brand placements, really allowing us to showcase multiple products. Same thing we talked about with the brand store before, right? On those short tail keywords, I don't know exactly what the customer's values are looking for. If I have a budget model, I have a performance model, I have a compatibility model, whatever it might be, making sure I showcase that wide net so customers can get an idea of the range of products that I have is important. And so focusing on sponsored brands ads allows us to do that. Just make sure that you edit those ad sets heading into the event to make sure you're really promoting those promotional ASINs, that you have sponsored brands ads now that are promoting a wider range of ASINs, some of which might not be on sale. We want to make sure that we make that adjustment heading into the event so that all three of your products on that headline ad are showing that discount badge as well. Awesome. The final thing that we can do heading into the event to plan is really utilizing AMC, right? How can AMC help us make decisions based on our ad strategy looking into the event? So the thing we talked about before was looking at our past events tentpole overlap reporting. So that was the lead in versus event or period versus lead out that we were looking at before, right? Maybe your brand doesn't see much impact on the lead in. And if that's the case, I can put more emphasis on my event period. Maybe your brand sees a really, really high impact on the lead in period, right? Maybe you see that someone purchases at 60% more, a higher of a rate compared to someone who only sees during the event period. Well, now I'm going to push more dollars to the lead in and really focus my Prime Day strategy on users who I exposed during that lead in. So that can help you drive the decisions to get the most effectiveness out of your event for you. I can identify campaigns, including sponsored product campaigns, that have the highest rooted brand percentage. I think we all, right? If we're running these deals, our hope isn't to get repeat customers. We know we're going to get repeat customers, right? But we don't want our repeat customers just waiting until we go on sale to complete the purchase. They wouldn't purchase anyway. Really, what we're looking to acquire here is those rooted brand customers, which, if you remember earlier, have a similar lifetime value to customers that are new to brand in any other period. So we can use AMC to identify what campaigns that I'm currently running are going to help me drive the highest new to brand percentage during the event as well. I can identify segments of high lifetime value customers, and I can create lookalike audiences of those and target those users as well, right? So like we talked about lookalike audiences earlier with Prime Day purchasers, I could create another one of users who have a high lifetime value for my brand, create a lookalike of those users that haven't purchased from me in the past, and use that in my targeting, whether it's a bid boost or a display asset as well. I could identify my ideal DSP reach and impression frequency, right? So you probably have an ideal DSP frequency per user that you're going to see the highest conversion rate at. You're going to see 90% of my sales come in this block of DSP frequency, right? And so I can really, because I want to make sure I can spread my dollars as far as I can dial in that frequency prior to the event so that I can make sure I spread my dollars a little bit further. Finally, I can find consideration tactics that I'm currently running that are having the highest down funnel sales impact. So I can look at things like first touch attribution, path to conversion reports to see down funnel if I'm running a DSP ad or a sponsored display ad. Maybe I'm not seeing much sales attribution there because of Amazon's last touch attribution model, but AMC could help us unlock, hey, the downstream ROAS, if we look at this campaign as a first touch and we attribute all sales to the first touch, has a 3-to-1 return, a 4-to-1 return, whatever that might be, you can identify the most efficient campaigns there and then really ramp those up and during that lead in period as well. Awesome. A next thing that I know we said we were going to talk about today is just how can we use automation during Prime Day to get the most efficiency out of the event, right? Everyone who's an ad manager knows that Prime Day is one of the most hands-on keyboard days of the year. So the more places that we have to automate those tasks that we have throughout the day, or even leading up to the event, the more benefit we're going to get out of it, right? So the first thing we can do, the first big task that often comes out of it is just restoring our pre-Prime Day bids and budgets. Throughout Prime Day, you're probably going to make 1,000 different changes to your account. Once Prime Day is over, right, we're back to our regular sales period. We do have, like we looked at earlier, we have a little bit of a taper off, but eventually we're going to be back into a normal sales period. And we don't want this 2-day event to kill our advertising strategy for the next month as we try to recover that. So a quick way we can restore that, two different ways, one if you're using Intentwise and one if you're not. But if you are using Intentwise, you can set up a rule or an automated rule that's going to increase your bids and budget by 1% right at the start of the event. So 12/10, Monday night, Tuesday night, whatever the first day of the event is, I'm going to increase everything by 1% to capture what is my current bids and budget. And then you'll have all your rules or all your manual changes that'll run after that, where I'm making, budget changes, bid changes throughout the event. And then I'm going to set up an undo of that same rule that's going to undo at 1 a.m. the day following the event's over. And we're going to push changes that are going to restore what was everything like on my bids and budget before the 1% rule ran, and everything will be back to its original state. So it's an easy way for using Intentwise to set that up. If you have questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me or your account manager on that as well. If you're not using Intentwise, though, on the other side of things, we can do something very similar using bulk sheets. So if you want to go in and download a list of bulk sheets, it's going to be several files, but it'll be worth it. You can download sponsored product keyword bulk sheets, campaign bulk sheets, sponsored brand keyword bulk sheets, right? And those are going to capture what are my current bids, what are my current budgets. And then after the event, I can go through, make a couple edits on those just to tell Amazon that I'm going to update it. I can upload those back into the back end of the console, and it'll restore all those bids and budgets from before the event as well. So a couple more manual steps, but definitely worth the effort that goes into that. The next thing we can do throughout the event is set up a keyword harvesting strategy for top performing terms that we're getting throughout the event, right? So we talked about earlier casting a wider keyword net, but that doesn't stop when the event starts, especially if we're looking at an extended event, right? I might see that 2 days into the event, some of my best terms are search terms that I'm not actually targeting as direct keywords. Well, again, either through an automation platform like Intentwise or through something like a bulk sheet, I can go through and identify what are those keywords that are getting performance but are not keywords, and we can add those back to the exact match keywords to our strategy, and that'll help us throughout the back half of the event get some of that additional performance out of there. The next thing we can do is utilizing bulk bid adjustments, right? You're going to have your adjustments at the start of the event that are probably going to raise your bids, raise your budgets across the board. Those are one thing we can do to automate. But the second thing we can do is automate things, especially if you're using an automation tool like Intentwise, throughout the event based off of the performance we're getting back. So if you're starting to see, right, that one campaign is running out of budget, right, on the first day or the second day, and it's performing well, I can set up a rule that says, if the average time in budget is below X percentage and the performance is above, a 3-to-1 return, a 4-to-1 return, whatever your benchmark is there, I'm going to go in and I'm going to increase the budget for that campaign for day 2, day 3, right, looking at that past day's data. Do the same thing for bids, but on the opposite end, right? If see that, my keyword on day 1 only got 10 impressions, right? Well, I'm going to go in and I'm going to increase that bid for day 2, for day 3, right? Until I start to get some more volume there so that I can make sure that I'm driving performance across my campaigns, especially within those focused products and focused keywords. Again, something we can do with bulk sheets in a little bit more of a manual fashion as well, if you want to, doing filtering and uploads there. But if you're using an automation tool, definitely makes it a lot easier on those fronts as well. Finally, we can automate this placement adjustments. Things like top of search are probably that's even more important during Prime Day than they are during any other period, as users are clicking on those top deals that they're seeing. All right, so if we're running a strong deal, we want to make sure that we're in the top of search for our users, especially if that's where we start to see performance coming in the first couple of days. We can also set up automations to increase those top of search placements. Maybe we see that business to business placements are doing really well, product page placements are doing really well, right? As we start to get that data back, using automations or bulk actions to increase our adjustments there can be another key thing to get performance out of the back half of the event. Awesome. The final thing we're going to look at, how do we measure the impact of what we're doing during Prime Day, right? So past the event, say we're in a couple weeks after now, how can we prepare for our future events too? And this is where Amazon Marketing Cloud is really going to come into effect. So the first thing we're going to look at is, what is our overall path to conversion? And what is our overlap between different ad types, right? We talked about this earlier as something we can do in the lead up to the event, but it's also a really strong thing for post event, right? Maybe I want to look at the lead into the during event period, and I want to see, which DSP campaigns, which sponsored display campaigns, which sponsored brand campaigns had the highest down funnel impact, even if I didn't see direct return on ad spend, right? So I might see, if I was looking at my data, that my strongest path to conversion was someone who saw a sponsored product TV ad and then a sponsored product ad. Right? And now I know, okay, in future events, that's going to drive a higher purchase rate. So we're going to put more dollars in the lead into sponsored product TV. I might see that I had my best overlap between DSP and sponsored product. Okay, well, in the future, I'm going to make an effort to bring more users who saw DSP during the lead up into sponsored product during the event period using something like bid boosting. So these are two key reports that are going to help drive those learnings as we get into the October events and Turkey 5 as well. Secondly, we can look at things like a first touch attribution model. So I can see, okay, which campaigns, if we say we're not going to look at the last touch return, we're going to look at a first touch return, which is saying every sale that comes from a customer's journey is going to be attributed to the first time they interacted with an ad within that journey. Well, if we do that, I can see which campaigns are the most effective at bringing in net new customers, whether that's during the lead-in period, during the event period, which campaigns are bringing in the most net new customers. And again, based off of the ad types, the campaign types, the targeting types that we discover there, that can help us bring in more net new customers during future events as well. So that combined with that last attribution data we already have is really going to help us see the full funnel of someone's customer purchase journey and make sure we have the most impactful ad sets running in the future. One thing I'll call out, we have one or two more slides on AMC, but one thing I'll call out, if you're not familiar, this also is available for users who are just using sponsored ads, right? So if you're only running sponsored display and sponsored brand and sponsored product, you can still run all of these reports and see the same impact, especially if you put an emphasis on sponsored display in the lead up or during the event period as well. The final thing that we can use AMC to measure is what ASINs are running the most effectively for us, right? So I might want to see which ASINs are bringing the most new to brand users versus repeat customers, which ASINs are driving the most long-term lifetime value, which ASINs did people come back to purchase again, or which ASINs did my repeat customers who have bought from me before but bought a new ASIN, what ASIN are they buying as their second purchase, right? So our ASIN overlap and gateway ASIN reports are really which is going to be focused on the new to brand on that second one, are going to allow us to value not only what ASINs driving new customers, but what ASINs are driving the longest long-term value and repeat purchases as well. So again, as I start developing my promotional strategy, what ASINs am I going to put on sale for future events? We have that data to help back our decision making as well. So that's a summary. We can go on for another hour or two, I'm sure, about all the different tactics we could have for Prime Day, whether that's with DSP, whether that's with sponsored ads, whether that's general promotion. But really hope that gave you guys a good, concise view of what are the different strategies we can do leading up to Prime Day. What can we do during Prime Day? How can I measure after the event? If you're looking to get more from Intentwise or myself, please feel free to connect with us. You can find me and more information from me on LinkedIn. Just look up my name, Kenton Snyder, or you can find more about Intentwise the same way, or you can go to intentwise.com for more about what Intentwise is, what is Intentwise doing, and keep up to date with us there. We also have a community where we're talking about all things Amazon, Prime Day, ad strategies, AMC, all the time from both people who work at Intentwise and other industry leaders. So we'll be throwing a link to the community in the chat. We definitely encourage you guys to join there. If you want to, it's a free community, definitely jump in there, and would be great to hear your insight there as well. If you do have any following questions for me, please feel free to email me at kenton@intentwise.com. I'm more than happy to help and assist in any way I can. I appreciate you all taking the time today, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thanks, everybody.